or do you want to just introduce?
Yeah. Go ahead and start with an introduction. That would work.
Hi, my name is Dave Carroll. I'm going to be the speaker for the Southern California PowerShell user group tonight. I've written a module that will help you work with potentially build automation to use the Twitter API, and that's the topic. So um, decided on calling it BluebirdPS because Twitter's got the bluebird icon, and that's about it. um, One second. So, who am I? I've been automating with PowerShell since about 2009, since V2, and I've been a PowerShell developer for several years, or consider myself a PowerShell developer for several years, and currently employed as a DevOps engineer. Been blogging about PowerShell and other tech topics since 2018, and I'm a contributor to the PowerShell Conference Book Volumes 2 and 3 on sale now, and of course, always on sale, but I'm going to have links for those at the end. I'm also was invited to participate in the PS Blog Week for the PowerShell 7 Now, the release, the March release for the LTS version. I was kind of shocked whenever Jeff Hicks reached out for me. I'm guessing he liked what I was doing with his um, the Iron Scripter challenges. So here's the agenda. We're just gonna talk about why do we need a new module. There's already a few modules out there for Twitter. Then we're gonna get just straight into some live tweeting, showing you some things, what the commands I've built so far. Then we're going to take a look at the Twitter API itself, and we're going to talk a little bit about REST clients, invoke REST method as a REST client, and there's others like Insomnia. And when you're first dealing, really, pretty much any time, you can use a REST client to easily mock up, to test out how to make the API calls. And I'm going to go through and show you that from scratch. Then I'm going to create a simple function, probably from the same command that we're going to use in the Insomnia. And then after we have that and we sure it's working, we will go behind the scenes. We'll look at, you're going to see how simple the functions are to create based on the framework that I've built. And we'll also examine how the module handles output and errors, how it invokes the API, and how it authenticates. Then we're going to go through the next steps, one of which, spoiler alert, is I need use cases from you guys, so I'll know, what direction to go and what to really focus on next. And then there'll just be some links at the end for Bluebird and for the like my blog and things like that. So the first question, why do we need a new PowerShell Twitter module? If you look on the PowerShell gallery, just look for Twitter or tweet, you're going to get maybe a half a dozen or so that, this module has a lot of other things, but it can actually tweet out. There'll be another one that can do a few more pieces in it. I think Adam Bertram has one, and the one that's been pretty much the de facto one that people have used has been the PS Twitter API, and it's a great module. It is built by basically screen scraping the API documentation and it builds out commandlets that maybe not are maybe don't uphold the best practices of like verb dash noun, things like that. So in and of itself, I mean, it's a pretty good module, and but I wanted something, and I believe that there's would be enough people in the community to use a Twitter module that made it a lot simpler to do the commands. The discovery of commands would be easier, things like that. So that's kind of where, I guess at the first of the year, I decided to start kind of throwing some code together, and did some mock-ups and started working on it then. And now we have a module that's actually live as of a few days or maybe a week ago in the PowerShell gallery. And as soon as I uploaded it, Jeff Hicks reached out or grabbed it and started, tinkering around with it and submitted, a few issues. And there was a couple of things that went, oh man, I didn't really think about that. So, I fixed a couple of them already, and there's a second release out there. So, like I said, it was called Bluebird. I was asking, some of the community members like what we should call it, and even before I settled on this, I did like searches to see if Bluebird was going to be used or trademarked or anything like that. There is like I think a Python module that is called Bluebird. Obviously not PS on it, but there was enough that I didn't see anything major. There was a because it's still going to be distinct, right? It's the PowerShell module, and BluebirdPS is the name. And I think there's like a web app and a mobile app that's actually called Bluebird, but I'm not stealing their thunder because it's completely different.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
We had a question. So, how do you go about API dev in PowerShell? Did you use or build a Postman collection to support your development?
I've used Postman before. I typically use Insomnia, and I'm gonna have some demo with Insomnia in this. I don't know. I don't think they provide a Postman collection. I don't think Twitter provides that for their, at least for their API v1v1 or sorry v11. And mostly how I go about developing for an API. We're going to get more into that on the second half of this, where we kind of dive into the module. Typically, I like having, at least one command that is a private function that's going to connect to the API, and then I have another private function that's going to translate everything that comes out from that, whether it's error or content, that's going to be delivered to the user. And then I build like a front end command that uses those to make things a lot simpler and tighter in the front end development, for the public functions. But we're going to get more into that later on. So let's go in and do maybe some live tweeting now. Let me just pull this over. No. Yeah. Okay, so I've already got the module loaded. Let's just see what commands we have, and I'll go ahead and list out or use one of the commands, the get Twitter API endpoint. This is a command that does not touch the actual Twitter API. This is just pulling together all of the data on the API endpoints that that I've already included in the module. So here you can see that we have all of these functions. Some of these are listed multiple times because, like for this particular, like get Twitter friendship, there's 4 different API endpoints that it goes against. And this was probably a neat way of doing things, that because they don't provide for their 1.1 version of their API, they don't provide JSON schema. So I was basically building my own schema just to be able to provide the end user a little bit of information. So the get tweet might be something that, you know, hey, let's do a get tweet because I want to see a tweet. Well, that you have to have the ID of the tweet. So the best thing that we're going to have now is as a search tweet. So let's start that. So the search string, you can call it, you know, pretty much anything that you can put in a search in the web API. And the web API, they actually suggest that you use that advanced search in there. Sorry, not web API, but the web site itself. They suggest using the advanced search to build your search strings. But in general, you can do something like this, and that is as simple as it takes. So currently, the commands do not, they don't translate into a like a full strong typed, there's not an actual tweet object type, anything like that. This is just straight up what's coming from the Twitter API. So there's quite a bit of content here. Let's just do, we'll just select the first one. First off, is everybody able to see? Do I need to increase the size of the font or anything like that? Or is this good?
It looks good to me.
Okay. So the most of the things that you find is reverse chronological order. So I selected the first, but this was the last thing that I tweeted. So, and it was about this. I believe this is a is their URL shortener, and this goes out to the tweet that you did, Matt. Actually, the quoted status. So let's take a look at this. I'm just going to put this into a variable real quick. And we see the quoted status. And this is the full status that I quoted whenever I made this tweet. You can see it's coming from Matt, and looks like he did it on his iPhone. So you see the links. It says Twitter for iPhone, but you can actually click on it. I guess for other purposes. And then for me, I also did it for my iPhone. So we found a tweet. Now, if we had the ID like this, we could use the get tweet. Spell it right. And this is specifically the tweet that we needed. It should be the same output. I could also do, I don't have anything that restricts. Sometimes they like leave out these entities, and I just don't have that in this get tweet. Another thing you could do, like you can get Twitter list by owner, and I'm going to put in myself. and these are all the lists that I've created that you can access. So one of the use cases that I had thought of, I guess back in July or so, is we can have curated lists by any number of people, and then we could have something that runs on Friday to be able to produce the PS Follow Friday list of people, and that way we're not manually grabbing the list out, from something. So that was one of the use cases that I was thinking of. And again, this is just the content from straight from the API. I'm not doing any kind of manipulation with it. Exactly. So let's see what the next thing is. Let's maybe. Is there anything does anybody want me to do anything specific with this? Like maybe I'll tell you what. Let's maybe go ahead and publish a tweet. And we're going to have the tweet text of something like currently presenting on BluebirdPS. And I'm not going to reply to tweet. I don't have any media to put to it. I'm just going to do that. Then I just so happen to have this, and we see this is a tweet deck. If you do a lot of Twitter, TweetDeck is something that I wish I had known about a few years earlier. It was somebody else that developed it, and then Twitter eventually bought it out. But if we click on this, you can see that this is the application that I just presented on, or I just published, tweeted on. And now let's go back. It provided us with a ID. So I'm going to do another publish. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to send just a graphic up. And the graphic is going to be here. And Bluebird actually tested it on a Raspberry Pi 400 over the weekend. It worked. And I've got it's just some output on that. So when you send a Twitter media, let me, I'm gonna need that ID. Never mind. So this is a tweet image. So there's 4 different or 6 different categories you can send. It's direct message, GIF, direct message image, direct message video, or tweet GIF, tweet image, tweet video. So this is going to be an image, and you can actually provide the alt image text. Alt image text is used it helps out usability. So people that has screen readers and things like that, it'll display that as well. And sometimes when it can't display the image itself, it'll just display the text. So this is going to be and that's really it. So we send it, and it's going to send up there, and it's going to give us a media ID back. So now that we have the media ID that I just sent up, we also have this ID for the thing I want to reply to, and we'll do a publish tweet tweet text. BluebirdPS on Pi 400. I'm going to say reply to this tweet, and then I'm going to say media ID this media, And that's really all that we got here. So do that. Everything works fine. And now if we go back over here, we see that Bluebird on PS will show this thread. Let me go actually to Twitter. It may look a little more, look better. So we can see that I'm presenting, this was the first tweet we did, and this was a reply to that tweet. You can see there's all text that's there, even though you can't really see it at this point. And we do see that that this is a Raspberry Pi. I'm actually running VS Code, and in the terminal of VS Code, I'm running, and I just did a search tweet, I'm pretty sure on Bluebird, a lot of the hashtag BluebirdPS. So that's basically what, there's a lot more commands, but that's how you would do this at the command line. Obviously, it's not quick. It's not too terrible. I mean, I've tried to make it as easy as possible, but it's not something that's going to replace, the web app or the mobile app or anything like that. This is really going to be designed to work with some kind of automation. The first time that I ran any commands like this, it was during the PS tweet chat, and I was using the tweet deck to get the tweet IDs so I could reply to them, as opposed to doing a search and trying to mill through all this text, because it's a lot of text. So let's. Does anybody have any questions so far? I mean, I can stop. And so there's a question about authentication. That's actually one of the things that we're going to be getting into pretty soon, and I'll just answer that then. And I think that's it. So the next step is the Twitter API itself. I've got a couple of things up over here. So the Twitter API, there's a V2. Currently, there's no V2 commands built into Bluebird yet. I've only been working on the V11, and also, as we see here, there's 3 different levels, and these are basically paywalls, different paywalls that you have to go through, and it opens up basically more data and less restrictions on how many times you can call the API. So for the most part, we're looking at the Twitter API. So like here we see the search tweet 30 days. It's in premium and enterprise, but you don't get that in standard. So when you do a search tweet, it's only going to be for the last 7 days. So if you need to cull a lot of historical data, you would want something to run, either every day, or run something that will be, at least within the 7-day mark. So we can do direct messages. We can work on the accounts and users. So let's go to the, well, actually, let's look at this. So apply for Twitter API access. The reason why there's not a lot of, probably a lot of discussions or presentations on doing social media with PowerShell or really any other thing, is that typically you have to sign up to be a developer for that platform. So that's essentially what I had to do as well. So there's okay, they do provide Postman collection for V2, by the way. That was a previous question, but nothing for the V1. There's a link somewhere, I'm probably missing it, for you to request developer account. So basically, when it's going to go to the developer portal, you'll have to sign up and create an application. This is Bluebird. So this is the application. Again, there's I have a link in the help, in the online help for this, on how to sign up for it. It's not going to be you go to the site, you sign up, and you get something back that you can use then. It may take 2 or 3 days. It could take maybe a week or two. Depends on, I guess, how busy they are. I guess there's just a person that does this. So anyway, I know that when it asks for app usage, when I first did this, I just put in, I'm creating a Twitter module, and just copied that several times to meet their minimum length requirement for this. But essentially, you have to create this, then you create the keys and tokens, and then you assign that this application specific permissions. Like one of the things that that Jeff must have not had, like he only had read-write permission for his application that he used previously. He had to go back and re-add the direct messages. And then if you changed any permissions, you have to go in and regenerate your keys and tokens. I'm not going to click on that because it'll show my actual, it'll show one of the pieces that you could use to and basically use this out. But there's 4 pieces to this, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So anyway, that's the documentation isn't super great on the version 1. Sometimes there might be, like in this table, there might be overlap, so a description may spill over into the name column and things like that, which makes it very difficult for anyone to accurately screen scrape at least the V1. The V2, they have their own schema that they use for that. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that. The next thing is the REST clients. There's, like someone said before, Postman. I've used Postman. There's Insomnia Core. We're going to see a demo of that in just a few minutes. And there's Carroll. That's a command line tool that's usually on Linux systems. Invoke REST method, which, by the way, if you're on a Windows system, the alias for invoke REST method happens to be Carroll, so you can actually type Carroll, I believe. And then there's a specialized REST client called Twirl that Twitter provides. That is, it does all of the authentication schemes and things like that in the background. And also there's a Visual Studio Code extension that's a REST client. This one here. So anyway, so let's get into Insomnia and take a look at how we can interact, or I do our first API call. So how's the font size on this? Looks good too?
Looks good on my end.
Okay. All right, so especially every GUI API REST client will have, some things may be very similar, some maybe not. We'll just look at this. We'll do the search tweet. I basically put in the commands, but these commands don't really mean anything. This is just a description. But if we see here, we can see that this is the URL that's going to be sent, and it's going to be used in the get method. On the authentication, the cool thing I like, and Postman does this as well, you can have you can set up variables. That way, whenever you're doing multiples of these, like all of this, I didn't have to go in and update my API key whenever it changes or whatever. Anyway, so let's, on this search string, we'll look at the query, and this is the actual piece that gets sent. And if you see the URL preview, this is what's actually going to be sent to the API. And if we do that, we should get a 200, and we get this where I'm not sure, did I retweet that? Somebody retweeted that from Jeff, where he posted the about the PS3 chat. Anyway, so that's basically how that works. Also, this timeline specific to there's probably something similar in Postman, but it will show you what what you sent, and this is the response. Actually, not the response. This is still everything that you're sending, and this authorization, it's OAuth, and this OAuth consumer key. All of this stuff is actually generated on the fly, and the signature itself is based on everything that you send in, plus your tokens, your token secrets, and things like that. So working with OAuth v1 is it was a challenge for me at the beginning, and I ended up essentially creating a OAuth parameters class, custom class, and hopefully we'll have time. We can just briefly look at that. So, like this is just another one. Again, using this, you see that for the list endpoint, there's 15, and it will decrement the limit, and it'll tell you that the epoch time when when this limit will reset. I'll also show you some places where I have that, where you can see it in the commands or after you run the commands. So let's look at, let's say we need to add, because I don't have a command called add Twitter friend. Let's go ahead and build that now. And we'll first kind of mock it up in this, and then we'll go over to VS Code and build it out there. So I've already found the API reference for the friendships create, and essentially I just need to have this URL. And again, I'm pretty well versed. I mean, I've been in and out of this documentation for a while, so I know kind of what I'm looking for. And then we have a screen name. I'm just going to do that. Is everybody here on? Yeah, who is online that maybe I don't follow? Does anybody have a Twitter account that I happen to not be following? And I'm looking over at the chat and the participants window now. So Dwayne W. So I'm just going to put in Dwayne W. And there was another. So enable notifications for the target user. I'm probably not going to do that, but essentially this is going to be what I do. And there's nothing I have to put here. Again, for this auth, I have to specify this, and then the API. I'm going to move this over because I just saw what was going on. It was actually showing the content of these variables. And I'll just regenerate my tokens after this. Okay, so I've set my consumer key, consumer secret token, token secret. Here's my query. We can see what it's going to be. Now hit the send, and looks like I'm now following Dwayne Wright. Congratulations. So anyway, we just kind of modeled out how to create this or how to use this particular endpoint on the API. Now let's build this in PowerShell. You're probably wondering, wow, we really need to get that PowerShell. So we know the endpoint, we've identified it, we've researched it, and we're going to just do this create the PowerShell function. Let me go and pull this up and close all there. So this is what I've got so far. This is basically what's in the repo, at least not everything that's not grayed out. And we're going to build a command. So Bluebird is going to be public. It's an API, and this is going to be within the users, followers, and friends. I'm going to do a new file. Add Twitter friend. So that's a little bit of a spoiler alert. It was relatively thin there, right? So essentially, I now change this to say add Twitter friend, and I need to go get that the endpoint. And then change that to post. Dogs are going to start barking in a minute. Okay, so I think for the most part, this add Twitter friend, that's all I need. This new Twitter query takes what is sent in with the bound parameters, and it builds a new query that this class will take as the third parameter, and then this invoke Twitter request will do all the heavy lifting. Again, I built this, and I built this, and I built this to make creating new commands relatively simple. Of course, for me to leave, I mean, I want to leave this in here, but I'm going to have to go back and this is the get Twitter API endpoint command. This is essentially how I build out, and I just go to the documentation, the Twitter API documentation, and copy paste in here, and set up the parameters and things like that. I say if it's this is the PowerShell parameter for, in this instance, is like search string, and you can search. I'll get into that in just a few, but this helps you see. It helps you understand like how the API can work, and it definitely is a documentation for the API, which is separate from the commands itself. So one of the last things I've been working on is getting a build script to run. So this build script uses, let me go to here. It actually uses Saki, PS depend, build helpers, PowerShell build. This is all things that's only required to build the module itself. The way the module is currently laid out, there's no way that it will run if you just like try to import this PSD1 because nothing is really filled out. This is just a shell that's being used. So the same thing for this, the way the PowerShell build module works, I'm having to do a little funky things with this, like do a prepend where this is actually all of the stuff that lives in the beginning. And again, we'll get maybe more into that. So we have add Twitter friend with the screen name and username. And if we look back at the at this, we have screen name. I said username, screen name, and user ID. So we have that and that. I'm not worrying about this follow yet. So now, fingers crossed, we can go to go here and do the build. And we'll do analyze, which does some things you'll kind of see. So again, as a user of the module, you won't see this. This is just if you're building the module itself. And now the module is done. Sorry, the module is built. And if we look over here in the output, this is new things. And if we go to this and we search for add Twitter friend, we see add Twitter friend. So here's the new thing. Now I need to just import this. I'm going to grab the path, start a brand new session, and import module, that, and here we go. So is there anyone else that I have not followed that I can follow? I tell you what, Dwayne, I'm going to just unfollow you, and then we'll do it again, this time with the Twitter, the add Twitter friend. So just give me a second. Now's a good time. I mean, if we need any questions asked, I can check that out as well.
Yeah, I hope this isn't like a dumb question, but why use the build process instead of a traditional module where it's in the PSM1 or imported into the PSM1?
So most of the let's take a look at the DBA tools module. It has thousands of commands, and if those commands were separate, when it does the import, it takes a huge hit, like many times, like probably 30 seconds or so to load everything. When you have less files to deal with, there's less load time, so it will import quickly. So that is one thing that you want to put pretty much everything that you have or that can be put into the root module, the PSM1 module there. That's, again, if you're going to support multiple, hundreds of commands, that's definitely the way to go. Maybe it was overkill for this, but I want this eventually to be where I make a commit, and then it will, from GitHub Actions, it will take that commit, spin up a new environment, and it'll go through the CI/CD to where it builds the module and then deploys it straight to the PowerShell gallery after some tests. I don't have any tests, no PowerShell tests yet, but that's on the radar. So that's the main reason why I'm doing the build process. It's you know how you start off with PowerShell commands at the command line, and then maybe making functions .source, and then pulling those into a just a script module, PSM1 is all you need, and then going from that to a module manifest. The next step after that is really writing one that would do the compile, and that includes testing and things of that nature. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. It's like one of the big things is it like performance, I guess, to put it short.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So I was looking for Dwayne's it's pending. I see now. So I'm gonna go in and cancel that request, and then I will just do this again. So we're looking at add Twitter friend, screen name Dwayne W. And there we go. Pretty much the same thing that that came out before. Also, I should have looked at this earlier, and it said protected, so his tweets are protected. And yeah, so that was pretty easy on creating a brand new command that actually adds something as opposed to just getting something straight out of Twitter. Is there any question about how easy it looks to build this command? I mean, again, having all of the things to do very specific things like this builds the query itself. This takes the query, the endpoint, and the method type, and it just moves it along through any of these invoke commands. Oh, one other thing too. So like, what if I wanted to see what commands I have actually entered in during this session? I've built in a Twitter history, and currently we see there's just one command that happened. So this response is straight from the what the Twitter API responds back. Doesn't contain the data yet, but it probably will. But this, we can tell that this is what we sent in. This is the URI, and this was the command that we sent with. So this is how long it took to get back. And for the post, I don't think there is a rate limit. I'm not sure why this isn't showing up. So I may have to look into that. But in general, that was an easy thing to do to create the request or the new function. And we did that. Okay, so now we can look at, again, I want to take, does anybody have any questions? And some of the questions may be, let's get into the thick of it, which is kind of what we started looking at, the private functions and the authentication piece. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the authentication piece as well.
Okay. Do you want me to start with that first? I mean, I don't have to do this particular order.
Whatever order you think is best. If that makes more sense after this, then feel free to wait, but it's kind of up to you.
So we've got about an hour. Yeah, we're almost an hour into it, right? And how much time do we have?
You can use as much of the 2 hours as you want for demonstration, and then have questions after. You can field questions as you go. I just set it till 8:30, but really it's until people decide they don't want to keep going.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look. I guess we can look at the first thing that this authentication piece. So this is just setting the authentication, the export, the import, the set authentication, and the test Twitter authentication. Well, this one actually goes out. These others don't actually go out to the Twitter API. But let's say, actually, let me go back. Sorry for the back and forth. So in this, no, it's the append. This append happens at the very end of all, is appended to that monolithic PSM1. And one of the things that I do is I import the Twitter authentication. So we can go back over here, import Twitter authentication, and we'll just do verbose. So what this is going to do, this will look to see if you have the credential file and validate that it has all the right fields in it, and then set the session variable, or sorry, the module variable to the values that it finds in here. So if we're just going to do that, is, you know, again, it's very simple. It's just pulling something locally. It's going to check the credentials file. It found it. It's going to import it, and then it just said it successfully imported. Now, I think when I do a set Twitter authentication, it will also do a test. It'll do that. It'll do this test, which just goes out and validates the credentials. And with PowerShell, anything that's a test should return true or false. And that's essentially what this is doing from the message request. So I don't really care about what it gives back, because it really gives back the user. But I don't even need that. And since I'm doing this information variable out, I have the Twitter history. This get Twitter history is actually the same thing that I'm putting out to the information stream. I like doing that because it gives more data to users, and it's tucked away in the information stream so they don't actually see it. It's not verbose, it's not warning or anything like that. So I'm basically utilizing the fact that I use the information stream here, and then just seeing if it's got 200 in it. This, by the way, is a ternary operator that's only available in PowerShell 7. I didn't actually go over that. This module is for PowerShell 7 only, primarily because of the way that the invoke web request works. It returns a different object type than the PowerShell version, the Windows PowerShell 5.1 returns. And I had another module for Dyne DNS API that I ended up creating 2 different backends of this in order to support the output and the errors, the way that it reported the errors. So in any case, I didn't want to have to deal with supporting multiple object types that is returned, from the command itself. So again, PowerShell 7 only and up, I guess. Of course, we're now at PowerShell 7.1, which is not a long-term servicing branch, but it's the thing that you probably should be running on your desktop. So So the authentication piece was pretty tough to figure out, and I made a class for it. This class it's got all of these properties on it. It's got two different ways to instantiate it, one with a query and one without a query. Because there's some things that does not have a query, like if you get the languages or you get the configuration or the user account settings. And if you remember the Twitter documentation, actually, this would be better. So if you can see here, this OAuth signature and all of this has to be created on the fly. And this OAuth signature itself is there, as I mentioned before. And that's essentially what this method does, is it produces that string to be able to send to it. And this mostly is you can almost treat this as like a suitcase, where you dump a lot of information into it, like the method, the URI, and the query, and then these other things are built as needed. And then it does things internally, and then it also does things along the way. So, for instance, there are some types of requests that are cursor requests or page requests, and you still have to go through the OAuth v1 method, the process of getting that signature every time. So I basically made this Twitter request to where I can use this within loops. So if we do pages, it's going to look for the page and then start just incrementing the page count. It'll update the query, and then just keep on doing that through the loop. Same thing for the cursor request. So the request, the data that comes back from Twitter has a cursor on it, and it's just basically like an integer, and then you have to use that in your next request to them in order to tell them start at this place. And so essentially the invoke Twitter request is used by everything that touches the Twitter API, and then it could be a cursor request or a page request, potentially, depends on what the API itself does or supports. The new Twitter query, again, it just pulls in the parameters that I sent through, which is the PS bound parameters, and I'm just pulling through for each key, going through and essentially this is sort of like a mapping thing. So for PowerShell, it might be screen name, but for Twitter, it needs to be screen_name, all lowercase. And that's essentially what this thing is doing, depending on if it's an array for the screen name or user ID, and then count, ID, sense. This sense ID is what the switch is, what the is the PowerShell parameter. And there's a lot of parameters from all of the different 43, 44 commands, and this new Twitter query has to have all of those so it can quickly and easily go through and again, we're just really creating a hash table that has the things that we want to send to Twitter. One of the other things on this, like this is the response data that I was talking about that I send to, um, actually I take the response data and I write it out with the Twitter response data command, which this handles errors. Actually, it does not. Anyway, this handles writing all the information to the information stream, and also adds it to the Twitter history, that command that we looked at, which essentially is just a module level variable list type. I think I went really deep. I don't know if I've probably lost some people, so I'm going to circle back around and see if anyone needs if anyone needs me to help them come back. Is there any input, any questions? I'm just looking at the chat now. All right, so Dwayne asked about the API v2, and yeah, I've already done some things to support the API v2. The API v2 uses the bearer token, which is normally like the JWT, I guess the JSON Web Token, or yeah, I think JSON Web Token. But for instance, I've got a set bearer token which goes out, gets the token, and you can see that it uses the API key and the API secret, and it returns it and saves it essentially. And if you've got the persist on, it will save it to disk as well. So I didn't want to automatically assume that everybody wants it saved to disk. I probably should reverse that to where if you don't want it saved to disk, like your credentials, then it wouldn't do that. But yeah, I am kind of doing some mocks for the V2. There's the Twitter developer advocate on Twitter. He reached out just to say, talked about the V2 endpoints, and also the forum that I'm going to announce this on probably in the next week or so. And so he asked what changes am I most interested in. It's a bit different. So the V1, you basically say, give me a user, and it gives you all the fields for that user, unless you say exclude the status and exclude the entities. But for the V2, you say, give me a user, now give me, and I only want this list of properties. So you have to be very specific about what you do, what you get back. And I don't know if I want to just, assume, these are the properties that I think is good that we should pull back. And then if anybody wants to add additional ones, sort of like the get AD user does, when you do get AD user or get AD computer, you get back a very small subset. But if you request, like dash properties, and you add more properties, you can pull that back. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking about the V2. Also, Jeff Hicks suggested that, these become strongly typed for PowerShell objects. So that's going to be, something else that I need to add to it as well. And Spencer was asking, the new Twitter query command takes the hash table as a parameter. So the thing is, a parameter, if you can specify the type, that a parameter can be of any .NET type or .NET Core type. essentially. So let me get back to the new Twitter query. So this hash table, this is the thing that kind of threw you. Yeah, again, parameter can be anything. A parameter could be a PS credential. It could be string. It could be, integer, int32, int64, hash table. It could be date time. So whatever you send it, if it's not a hash table, like if I were to just send a string, it would fail. Also, if you notice this this suppressed message, this is for PS Script Analyzer, which is part of the CI/CD build, the build process that I have now. And if I didn't include this, it will throw a warning, because if it thinks new means I'm going to be creating something new, and I should have a should process, which for this I don't need to have a should process because it's not really doing anything meaty. Let's see what else. Yeah, so what you pick as your parameter, it really depends on what you need to have happen. Like if we look at the invoke Twitter request, this OAuth parameters, that's the actual type that has to come over. So I couldn't send just a simple hash table even. That wouldn't work. Because of the things that I do, sometimes actually even in this cursor request. So the OAuth parameters class can be more dynamic. So I basically remove the cursor, I add the cursor, and it really depends on what you need. But parameters definitely can be any type, and can be an array of any type as well.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. That was really cool. Like in my primitive thinking, I would have made a whole bunch of optional string parameters for different keys in that hash. But that was a really cool way to see it done.
Yeah, and it's all about just taking the data from one step and sending it to the next. So yeah, I've done. This is probably the first time that I did that. I had another module, again, another API module that I don't remember. I didn't have the class, first off. I just had the invoke command, and yeah, so I don't think at that point it was like this, OAuth parameters or anything like that. That one used V2, OAuth V2. Any other questions that I've missed? Yeah, no need to turn off the privacy. I know that was a few minutes ago that you asked that, Dwayne. And yeah, so let me see where we're at in the PowerPoint of things. This was an older list. I've got like 43, 44 commands now, public commands, public functions. And like, I think I just have get Twitter safe search, like this one's not even there anymore. And we've kind of looked at, I didn't really go that deep into the Twitter response data. Essentially, let me just do this. So the public function, Visual Studio, who's trying to help? So the public function will call the private function of the invoke. Typically, the invoke will call write response, or a like a write error record, something like that. So this is how I do API things. So the public function could be whatever, but you provide just enough at this level to be able to send it to the next step. And let's say, for instance, for the cursor request, we can do and a lot APIs, many APIs will support cursor requests or page requests along with a standard, just straight up request. So essentially, this is like the layout. You've got a public function, and then you have the private function, which could be a cursor request or page, whatever. But ultimately, it's going to invoke this lower level function, and then this thing itself, the invoke actually will give the response. So this is the output, including any verbose or warnings, anything like that. And the error also sends out an actual error. So let's do that. All right, so we got an error. This object not found because I just put in some gibberish there. And if we get the error here, we can see where it failed on. And this is the error details that came back. Also, Twitter error responses, it's a little bit janky. I had to create a JSON that mapped out the response that they gave that corresponded with a particular HTTP status code, and then specified the .NET exception type that I wanted to create. So that's how you got a specific object not found error message. And that's handled in this new Twitter error record down here with error mapping. So yeah, a lot of time went into kind of getting this right. So again, you break apart the pieces that shouldn't really be together, but they will work together. It's kind of like a team. You're going to have multiple people on a team, and each one has this. Typically, their specific thing that they do, maybe more siloed than what really should be happening. But essentially, that's how I built out these commands. This would be the most simplest roadmap. Of course, there's an authentication piece that would come in here somewhere. It might happen at this level, or it might happen here. So, like with the other API that I dealt with, I would have to log in, and I had a connect. So, like there's a connect, like Exchange Online or whatever. Connect to the VMware client or the VMware server. So the other one had a connect, and basically it sent the password, the username and the password then, and it sent back a bearer, the token, bearer token, which had a time to live on it. And so that's how that one worked. But this worked differently because they use OAuth v1. Let's see what else. I think I covered most of that. Yeah, so Java Web Token. Currently, Twitter has some API v2 endpoints available. Actually, Twitter was using OAuth v1 since 2010. However, I did do a search on the Twitter API screen name, and the screen name created at blah 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 2007. So they had a user, screen name Twitter API since 2007, which would lead me to believe that they probably had API of some sort in 2007. Yeah, so the next steps, I talked about the pester test. In a module that fully supports CI/CD, you really need the pester test, because the pester test would go through and validate, your code to where you're not sending out, shoddy code or whatever. And in DevOps CI/CD, it's the motto is usually fail fast. And when you fail fast, you can recover faster. So it's like fail as soon as you can, and then don't go, to the next step or the next step. That way you're not wasting all the extra time. Twitter Labs is where new ideas are being percolated, and then whenever they're ready to go, they're dropped into the Twitter API v2. And the big thing is, I need to know how you guys think you might use the module. So the use cases that we've had so far, again, like I said, we've had an automated PS Follow Friday list. My original use case was actually just to announce on Twitter, and eventually others, but on Twitter, of new blog articles that I write. And there's another person that he was doing something with looking up stock quotes or something like that. And I think he was doing that maybe definitely automated. So this, I don't know if you can tell, but writing, typing in a lot of these codes at once, this is pretty easy. The add Twitter friend, things like that. You're not going to be tweeting with this on a regular basis because it's going to be too time consuming. You're not going to be searching on a regular basis, ad hoc searches or whatever, but you could set up something that's automated that uses your application, and it can go, it can do whatever you need it to do, assuming that I've got the command in there. So anyway, those are some of the things that we've thought of so far. Really, whatever you guys could potentially think of. I thought about, like an automatic retweet. So there's services that actually will, you can say, follow these 5 or 6 users, and every time they tweet something that has this word in it, retweet it automatically. And this can be something very similar for that. You can set it up through like an AWS Lambda or an Azure function, any kind of like serverless thing like that. You can set it up. Probably in GitHub Action if you even wanted to do that. So pretty much that's it. What we've come up with so far. We need you guys, whatever you think you might use it for. Either drop me, contact me on Twitter. Of course, my handle's been down in the bottom of all the slides. Contact me on Twitter, or submit a feature request. And if you happen to get it and you find a bug, please submit a bug report so I can fix it. My other module, somebody submitted a bug request, and I was ecstatic because it was the first time that someone besides me that submitted a bug report. I need to know about those things, and any developer needs to know about the problems that users are experiencing with that. So, don't feel shy about putting in a bug request or a feature request or whatever. The next step is probably going to be maybe pester test, but I'm probably going to try to do some more ads and some things that let you manage stuff like lists, being able to add members to lists and remove members. That's probably going to be the next steps. And then I will probably work on the output to make it more strongly typed and with the type formats that Jeff was mentioning, like on Twitter, or maybe he mentioned it just in I think he mentioned it in the repo. So anyway, that's mostly that. It's in the PowerShell gallery now, and you can just look up BluebirdPS or use the bit.ly. You can look at the repo. Again, I like using bit.ly. There's online documentation, which I haven't shown, which I should. So all the docs that you have, so all the documentation that you have in the as far as the help, like if we were to do get help and then get Twitter user, we see that, and you can also see that I've got the like the online version, the API documentation and things like that. And if we do online, there you go. As the guys over the pond was saying, Bob's uncle. So all of these things are out here. This is using read the docs, which is takes the markdown and converts it into essentially online documentation. The getting started is where you should start off. And here's the link for the apply for a Twitter developer account. Then I have the note about when you've been accepted, then you have to set up your access permissions, and you need the read, and you need read, write, and direct message. So when you do the set Twitter authentication, you just put in the persist, and this will show. This kind of shows what you key in. This is still considered a secure string, so it should not show up in like PS readline history, things like that. And then it shows when I did the verbose, it will show you that it connects to Twitter to verify that what you put in, and then it's going to save it out to a file. This is an old thing because it's now BluebirdPS, so I'll have to update documentation. And then this install, you can get it from the release page from the repo, but most likely you should just get it from the PowerShell gallery. And now that probably is that. The Twitter developer resources, dev.twitter.com. My blog is powershell.anovelidea.org. Alternately, you can go to the davecarroll.com and it'll redirect over to that. That's a little bit about branding your online presence. And the conference book, which supports the on-ramp scholarship program for the summit, is at LeanPub. You can see PS Conference Book 2 or PS Conference Book 3 for that. And that's that. Definitely would take any questions. I'll just leave the links slide up. I'm good for another 20 or so minutes. Ask away. Does anybody want to see me upload a video?
That would be cool. Yeah, I think that'd be super interesting.
Okay. So, again, the path, and I've got it under media, and I just so happen to have it snowed yesterday, so I took a video of that on my phone without sound. But this is going to be a significant size. So if we do that, we can see, what is that, 10 meg? Yeah, about 10 meg. So and again, when you're sending media, you have to specify the use, which is in a tweet or in a direct message. So that's that. Also, the alt image text is only for images, not for GIFs, not for video. So if I do that, it's going to fail because it's actually it failed because of parameter validation first. If I do that, it will fail because it's not the tweet video does not allow the alt image text. So doing this without alt image, and you should see, I'm going to do verbose. So you're going to see probably all the calls, and you see that also in the write progress that comes up. So you see now we're in the beginning append phase, so it's appending. And then there's a finalized phase, which is just basically getting the state back. And now we're waiting for the status, and now we're done. And the processing info, this state succeeded, and we're completed at 100%. So the processing info, just so you know, I don't know if you remember many years back, Adam Savage from Mythbusters, he uploaded a picture, and it still had the geotag data in the picture, so people knew exactly where he lived. He had to move, and he didn't like it a bit. So now when it's probably on every social media site, when you upload a picture or video or anything like that, it will scrub the metadata that's on the picture itself, or at least it will hide it from any use. No one else can actually see it. So the processing, basically, that's what that means. It's just scrubbing the data, so no one could track you down, essentially. So now we have this media ID. Let's publish a tweet so you guys can see it. Currently, this published tweet text, I don't have anything that validates the length of it. So if it's more than like the 250 or whatever it is, it will it'll probably error out. That's one of the things I need to do. So I envision a published tweet with the tweet text being validated, and like all the URLs being shortened and things like that, and also a published tweet thread, which you could send in an array of strings. So basically, this is a tweet, this is a tweet, and this is a tweet, something like that. I don't know how I'm going to deal with the potentially adding images or anything like that, but that's later on. By the way, everybody, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived in Southern California for like 4 years, but This is the second presentation for this module. The first one was ironically on the East Coast, and there's no reply tweet and the media ID, and I think that's really it. I'm still to do the verbose so you can see that. So I had a little snow yesterday, and that's the text. You see the OAuth header string that's being sent, and then here's the web request parameter. So basically the info REST method that's going through, and it looks like maybe the I need to work on that just a smidge, or maybe that was because I expanded it. Anyway, so yeah, that should be setting out there, and if we want to go take a look. Again, no audio, so just a little bit of snow. It actually accumulated just a little, nothing on the road or anything like that. And so next step. So, Dwayne, what was the thing that was good to know? I just saw the something about 3 minutes ago.
I think that was an anecdote about it was Adam Savage, and then that geodata.
Yeah, it was. I remember it being pretty. He caused a bit of a stink about it, I think, but I don't know. I've been watching his YouTube tested channel and enjoyed it quite immensely. The image that I sent up earlier, I'm going back over here. That's because this is what you're seeing. And so this is what I sent up just now, and this was Bluebird on Raspberry Pi 400, which is pretty nice. It kind of harkens back to Commodore 64, 128, Alpha 2Es, stuff like that. I'm going to probably run some emulation on it, but it runs Visual Studio Code and PowerShell, just nice enough. That's really all that I had. I tend to go very deep in some of the explanations, but I know that's not necessarily where most people would want me to go. So for that, I'll apologize. I definitely can answer any questions you have now or on Twitter. If you have questions about the module itself, you can go in and put in a discussion. I think I have a discussion type issue on that now. I guess I can show you the repo real quick. So some of those things that you saw on the help site is built out of this README. So this README actually has all of the stuff, as opposed to like the getting started being separate and all that. So issue, so I've got an open discussion. So if you wanted to talk about anything, you can just create a new issue there. And specify open discussion topic and put in whatever you need. So again, I really welcome bug reports. I welcome feature requests, and I get to them immediately. But definitely, this module is meant to be a module for the community, probably more or less the automation community, again, because it's not a great tool just for everyday Twitter usage. If you have a lot of lists, or if you want to do some calling on who you're following or whatever, then you can definitely do it, through this way. One of the things that there's like, when you can do a bookmark, there's not an openly documented endpoint for that. I wish there was, because I started doing a lot of bookmarks and it's like, what is this? This is no good. Yeah. Oh, so you can also retweet and like tweets. So let's say this tweet itself, I can do set tweet like and then the tweet ID, and I just liked it. You can see the favorite count of 3. Likes used to be called favorites, which is different from bookmarks. Actually, no. So you can shows that I like that, and expense. So that's that, and also we can one other thing too. So you notice the tweet ID that I used. This is how I was grabbing it from in the PS tweet chat. It's just right here. So unfortunately, it doesn't look the same for. You can't get the media ID. So once you send the media ID and you lose the ID itself, or send the media, once you lose the ID, you can't really get it back. And if it's not used like within a day, the media dies, or maybe even a few hours. I'm not sure exactly what the time limit is. But essentially, if you send it up, you should use it right then. So yeah, the ID is the same thing as you see in the URL. And I'm going to do a set tweet, actually set retweet, and just do verbose. And stupidly, I didn't have the same parameter. There we go. So that was bad. So I had on the tweet like a tweet ID, but I don't have tweet ID here. So I'll probably be fixing that in the next release. And we can look back at the Twitter history, and we see essentially what's being sent over. So that's a post. The retweet's a post. The tweet likes the post. And you notice that these are a little bit different. So this uses the ID of the tweet itself that you want to retweet, and this has a string query, or a query string that it appends to it. Here's where we publish the tweet. So the send media, send Twitter media, actually this send media status, get send media status is a private function that the send Twitter media uses. So you'll see some private functions in here. I'm not sure if I want to. I don't think I want to exclude those, but you can see all of that. And here's this one, the post. This is no content. So this is probably, these are sending up those chunks, and this is actually doing the finalize. The one thing I know, like the last time I checked, the PS Twitter API module sending media didn't work on his. It like something failed on it, and essentially that was that. I got, like I said, once I found out how to make it work, I patted myself on the back because I thought it was kind of cool.
I think that's a huge amount of effort on your part, is to put all the Piece, I had no idea how complicated Twitter's API was as somebody that's never used it before. So this is a huge accomplishment in and of itself.
Well, you've used the Twitter API before, right?
I personally have not.
Yeah, I think you have. You've used a website, or you used the right. So the thing is,
That's
this
fair.
API is what builds. I mean, they build their front end applications against this API. So if you've used their the mobile app or the web app, you've used it before. You just didn't know it.
That's fair. Yes.
Yeah, and so I don't know if you guys noticed that there's fleets now only on the um, only on the mobile apps, and I didn't like fleets. Fleets are like stories, right? Fleets are like stories, and I've just been using it on Twitter. I don't use it on Facebook or Instagram or any other stuff. Not really. Maybe I use it on Snapchat, but my Twitter is my professional side of things, and I just been, kind of like the module. I've been putting stuff about that on there, and these fleets die like after 24 hours. So there's probably a um, there's probably an endpoint for the tweets that's in the V2 that I haven't got to yet. Um, but since it's only available on the mobile app, I don't know if I'm going to really mess with that. So that's like a brand new thing that happened. Um, yeah, and I don't know. I mean, if you guys, do you think you guys would want to change like your background or your profile image, any of that stuff, or your profile content? Do you want to change that, or you just want to kind of validate it? That's one of the questions. Like, what do you think that you might use this for? Um, is definitely the takeaway. That's your guys' homework. So please let me know.
Yeah, I think just to give an immediate answer to that question, I think for me, as somebody who has a couple public projects that I've been working on over the years, one of them being a PowerShell module I'd like to get back to and refactor one day. I think one big point for community-based projects that a lot of people don't consider is how you announce changes to those things, right? Like if you make changes, how are you communicating those things to people who are potentially installing new versions of your module or updating them or whatever? So something like this would be extremely useful to integrate into the CI/CD pipeline for whatever that project is, and posting a snippet of the changelog on Twitter, or formatting a specific message that you want blasted out whenever a new version is uploaded. So stuff like that is this is hugely useful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the changelog. Um, so this changelog was created with PowerShell and the git log. So I didn't actually go in and create these. So I create the issue, make the issue very specific, and then I just let my script go through and generate this. And, I put in, like, if it's an initial release, or if it's a bug fix, or whatever, update strongly recommended. So these two things is what Jeff Hicks reported on. So we can look at that one. We can look at that one. So this is how issues. This is how GitHub, GitLab, whatever you use. This is how the developers gets feedback, immediate feedback. So, oh, did I not hit the right one? I must not hit the right one. Oh no, there it is. So anyway, yeah. So this, whenever he imported the module, it runs the import Twitter authentication, and because he did not have the env home set, it failed. So I had to go back, and this is essentially the code that I provided, since it's PowerShell 7. And there was a question in the chat about how do I like using VS Code with PowerShell 7. I pretty much use it like 99% of the time. I've got Mac for work. I've got a Windows laptop, and now I've got the Raspberry Pi, and I'm running VS Code on those on my Windows system. I mean, it works nicely. You know, you have to set up like the default shell, so that works nice. You can go through and debug. If you haven't, there's some good YouTube videos on how to use Visual Studio Code debugging to help you step through, as opposed to just going in and doing, you know, write verbose or write warning or whatever. I've done that. I still do it some. I'm trying to get more into the, you know, using the debugging, the debugger of whatever IDE that I'm using, like Visual Studio Code. It will definitely help when you can essentially import a module and then start running commands. You set a couple of breakpoints where you think that the error might happen, and then it'll wait for you to, you know, look at what's there. You can examine all of the variables that's in flight at the time, and just keep on going, you know, to the next step, to the next step, until you find the problem so you can correct it. Yeah, PowerShell 7, I've been using it since, you know, probably the RC days, before 6 was done. It's not, I don't think it's officially done. It might be close, but PowerShell 7, 7.1 definitely with VS Code works smooth for me, and it's what I work in daily. May not always be PowerShell, but it's always VS Code. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So Dwayne, you know, once you get into it, just let me know. You know, go out to the repo, submit an issue, you know, or, you know, hit me up on Twitter. You know, just say, hey, you know, I've got this issue, I've got a problem, or you know, I also accept attaboys. That's a good thing too. That's probably, I mean, I've said that's it, but we keep finding talking about some things. We can keep the conversation going on Twitter. We can, you know, go and spend the rest of the, you know, 20 minutes or whatever before bedtime. I don't have a bedtime of 10:30, but in any case, yeah, that's it for me. Again, I apologize if we went too deep in some of the subjects. Sorry if I didn't cover everything that you was hoping. Again, it's the learning process. It's the second time that I've presented this. After the first time, I basically reversed the order. The first time I went straight into authentication, and I spent way too much time in that. Jeff Hicks was wanting me to submit this, you know, basically a talk like this for the next PowerShell Summit. That's they just like released the call for proposals, so I'm going to do that as well, like put in the proposal anyway. So yeah, any feedback even on the presentation, not just the module, but the presentation itself, would be very helpful for me. One of the things that, you know, in IT is everything is a work in progress, and you work for continual improvement, and that's in your code, in your personal life, in pretty much everything, like, you know, speaking or, you know, presenting on something. Always trying to improve. My today should be better than my yesterday, or I should be better than I was yesterday. I think that's the right way to say it. In any case, that's it for me. I don't know how many people we have left on the participants. Not that many. Drainmark and Spencer and Matt.
I
don't know how
think you
many-
did you did a great job. You know, you're saying that it's only been the second time, but I will say that having a mix of I think kind of like 100 level content or maybe 200 level content all the way up to 500 level content is good for me personally, because it kind of, you know, wakes me up with the easier stuff to kind of grasp. And then when you dive into the inner workings, and I've actually been reading some of the code on the side as you've been talking about it, is super helpful. So you did a great job. And I think as you continue to present on this, it's, you know, it's only going to get better. And by that, it's going to get even, you know, even better than it already is. So I think you did a great job. And this is the most extensive, I think, personal project I've seen with PowerShell in a long time.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I have put some time into it, for sure. A lot of it was back in February, and then, you know, I announced it. You know, here it is. Can I get some? I was trying to get some traction then, and it just didn't really happen. And then I think somebody asked another question like around May, and then I started looking at it then again. And yeah, it's definitely a big undertaking, but hopefully, you know, if it continues to grow and grow and grow, like, I don't believe I'll ever have 100% all APIs that Twitter supports in this module. Some of them won't even make sense to be in a module. And there's probably some that I've got in there that may not even be useful, but, you know, they're Git commands, and again, they're very easy to build out. It takes longer to write the documentation, and, you know, so like we've got this, you know, this add Twitter friend, 18 lines of code, and the documentation, for instance, on a the Get Twitter friends is 174 lines of code. So there's more code, there's more lines of documentation than there are lines of code. So that means that I think that means that I've got the code pretty tight on what, you know, on how it's implemented.
I would agree.
By the way, this is using Platypus to build out the external hep file. That's like a whole nother topic, just the documentation piece. I put in a poll on Twitter to ask people how they normally did their help files, and so far it may have been completed already. Yeah, so this poll of if you use Platypus, how do you create the module external help? And most people, looks like they used from comment based, and very few used the from commands. So how I'm doing it over here is actually from commands, because if you look at this, there's no documentation inside of this, right? It's just straight code, but then the documentation is handled by the this markdown. Is handled by the markdown by Platypus, and then the build process is needed to splice everything together into a single mammal file, and then that's what becomes the that's what the help is. So when you do the git help, that was in another window. Yeah, so when you do the git help without the online, This is coming from the XML, MAML, which is sort of XML, and not from the comment-based help. Because I typically don't do that. So anyway, that was just that last little piece there.
All right.
guess it's-
Well,
Time to shut her down, I guess.
yeah, let me stop the recording here.